Say you didn't touch those files. The room was silent but for the ticking of a clock somewhere. He stared the man down, jaw clenched, shoulders squared, his injured hand balled at his side. I'm not lying for you, the other replied, sweat beading at his hairline. He tossed an envelope onto the table, it slid, scattering dust. Tell them you found nothing, the threat hit sharp as a slap. He glanced at the door, then back. No, he said, voice clear, controlled. Footsteps echoed in the marble hallway, sharp, closing in. I said, burn them. His shadow loomed, blocking the weak winter light. The man's hand hovered over the envelope, uncertain. You're out of time. The doorknob rattled, voices on the other side. He stepped forward, breath fogging in the cold air. This is over for both of us. The voices turned to shouts now, boots pounding toward the door. Before any of this, before the snow, the threats, the creaking floorboards and secrets in envelopes, there was just the cabin, the dark, and the sound of what he'd lost. The day Tyler stood in the law office lobby, he had $26.40 to his name and the sleeve of a coat from a thrift store pulled over his bad arm. Plaster dust clung to his shoes. His ex-wife's lawyer hadn't bothered to meet his gaze. The official paperwork stacked at his elbow looked 3 inches thick and cold as winter steel. 90% of the assets, that's what Ashley gets, the paralegal said, adjusting her glasses. House, vehicles, joint savings. She read the terms in that brisk, don't argue voice Tyler had learned to hate. His stomach lurched, both from the pain in his healing arm, the one he could barely lift, and the thought of leaving Boston with nothing but what he could grab in his working hand. He signed each page, lips pressed together. He remembered swerving on black ice 4 months ago, waking among twisted metal and glass, Ashley crying in the ambulance, already far away in her mind. A final envelope was pushed toward him without ceremony. He looked at the heading, Quitclaim Deed, Lake Reeve Cabin. Your mother's old place, it's all that's left. Just sign and take your copy, the paralegal said, barely hiding a smirk. He'd almost laughed. The cabin was more myth than memory, a 2-room shack up the Alaska frontier, now probably overrun by mold and chipmunks, the kind of place his mother had run to, not from. Developers sniffed around that section of the bush country for years, but nobody wanted her land. Let alone the rotten mansion 3 miles down the logging track, where she once cleaned rooms and told stories of old Boston families come to ruin. But scrawled on the cabin's deed in faded ink was a note in his mother's script. For Tyler, there's more to this than you know. Start with the key in the floorboard. He hesitated. Whoever called a cabin worthless had never lost everything and been forced to start over with a single, stubborn thread of hope. If you've ever watched someone strip away every piece of your life and expect you to bow, pay close attention. Sometimes the last, loneliest thing you own is the only place the truth can hide. It would take just one drive across a continent, a broken highway, and a past that refused to stay buried. The wind up from Lake Reeve nearly ripped the car door out of his only good hand. Tyler grunted, fighting the latch and cursing his stiff, numbed fingers. Icicles clung to the porch beams of the tiny cabin, spit gray and sinking under a load of snow. Smoke curled from another homestead far off, but no neighbors for miles. Nobody to see him limp up the steps, grip the rail, and stumble as the pain in his shoulder spiked. He pressed his forehead to the warped wood, every sense sharpened. He remembered lying in the wrecked car, paramedics yanking the door open. All he'd heard was his own breath, ragged and wet. Now, standing on this battered porch, it was almost the same. His life shrunk to a sharp point of pain and cold. Inside, the cabin was little more than shadows and the reek of mice. His mother's old boots caved in by the stove. He dropped his duffel and closed the door. Every board creaked. He scanned the room and found the floorboards near the sink warped, one loose at the end. Crouching awkwardly, he edged it up with his good hand, scraping his knuckles. Cold metal scraped his palm, a dull brass key wrapped in wax string. Beside it, a folded slip of paper. He unfolded it. Behind the kitchen cabinet swing, don't pry, her handwriting. A hint, he realized, at something hidden behind the wall. He straightened, heart pounding. The wind rattled the glass. Why would Mom hide a key? He muttered aloud, glancing toward the bare window. The empty fields beyond, covered in snow, offered nothing but silence in reply. He moved to the kitchen, every joint aching. The cabinet to the left of the sink was wrong, about a foot deeper than the others. He wedged the key into the slot at the base, wiggled it, and suddenly the whole section shuddered. With a hesitant tug, the cabinet swung outward, revealing a yawning corridor of darkness chiseled behind the wall. His breath fogged in the sudden chill. "I'll need a flashlight," he whispered to himself, determination flickering. There was no telling how deep this secret went. A whiff of old tobacco drifted from inside, and the faintest trace of perfume, the kind only found in things left untouched for decades. He hesitated at the threshold. Somewhere in that dark corridor, a family secret was waiting to be uncovered. He stepped in, one hesitant stride at a time. He aimed the weak flashlight, barely brighter than a phone screen, down the corridor. Footprints, maybe a child's, had left smudges in the dust. The passage curved and dropped, the air cold, stones wet to the touch. Each step echoed uneven. His foot slipped once, jarring his bad arm. Tyler swore, braced with his healthy hand, and let the pain ignite his focus. He pictured his mother, hair tied back, singing along to old records she called battle anthems. He pictured Ashley, her finger wagging as she outlined the prenup. "You're not getting a penny more than you earned, Tyler. That's what we agreed on." He pictured the Boston nights, snow softening the outlines of everything, including his dreams. Midway down the passage, there was a heavy wood door, padlocked but not latched tight. The brass key again, he tried it. The tumblers clicked, he pressed inward. A hidden room, maybe once a cold storage larder, yawned wide. Cardboard boxes and brittle newspaper stacked chest-high. On a hook, a winter coat, child-sized. His heart caught. Childhood drifted back, his mother's gentle voice promising, "One day the truth will come out, but you have to be ready to hear it." It had meant nothing then. Now it felt like a riddle tailored just for him. He began rifling through boxes. Journals, bills, faded photographs. Receipts for groceries and notes from someone named Hazel, a name he didn't recognize. But what pinned him in place was a battered strongbox tucked beneath a heap of dusty blankets. The lock was already broken. He lifted the lid. Inside, a sheaf of legal papers, birth certificates, and an odd plastic vial with a testing swab, a sticky note, for proof if ever needed. Flashlight trembling in his hand, Tyler squinted at the top page. Certificate of live birth, Ronald Marshall Ivy. His jaw tightened. The next sheet, his own, except the surname struck him cold. Tyler Wayne Ivy, not Campbell. The family name his mother had used all Tyler's life had never matched the story she told him. He flicked to another sheet, paternity results, Ivy Estate legal proceeding, 1991. Confirmed, child Tyler Wayne Ivy, biological mother Margaret Ivy. A cold sweat slid down his spine. "Why'd you lie to me, Mom?" he whispered, voice thready. But a third file, newer, had been tucked at the bottom, dated just 2 years before his mother's death. It was the smoking gun, legal heir, sole beneficiary under sealed order, naming Tyler as the only legitimate heir to the Ivy estate, a Boston family he'd only heard about in salacious news stories about embezzlement and scandal. He sucked in a harsh breath. No, this can't be real. His own eyes, in black and white on the DNA test result, stared back at him, proof inked in federal type. He barely noticed the swirling flakes outside the tiny glass portal at his side. But inside, in that narrow hidden room, everything froze solid except the pounding ache in his chest. He staggered back, files hugged to his chest. He dragged the evidence-laden box back through the corridor, mind in overdrive. Someone had worked very hard to bury these records, and not just his mother. Tyler remembered the silence in the law office when Ashley and her lawyer went over his finances, the way neither would look him in the eye. That prenup, so tight, so thorough it left nothing but scraps for him, had they known. His grip whitened. He snatched up his phone, scrolled feverishly for a familiar number. Only one came to mind, an old friend of his mother S. from Boston, a legal clerk named Dennis Murphy, known for running his mouth when nervous. He pressed call, hands trembling. "Dennis, it's Ty. I need help, major help." A static-riddled silence then. "You're alive, Tyler, don't say another word. Are you at the cabin?" He explained quickly about the box, the certificates, the DNA swab. "It's about the Ivy estate," Dennis interrupted. "You need to listen very carefully. There's a city appraiser heading out to value your mother's old property for the town. In 5 days, developers plan to buy you out for pennies. Ashley's working with them, Tyler. They want it listed as worthless." Dennis's breathing was frantic. "You need to get those records back to Boston tonight, or you'll lose everything again." "But I can't even drive properly. My arm," Tyler protested. "Don't care," Dennis snapped. "That paper you found, it's worth more than the rest of the Ivy fortune. Bring it. I'll help you crack them open, but you've got a deadline, kid." He stared at the flickering bulb in the kitchen, mind racing. Cabin keys, hidden corridors, family secrets that didn't just rewrite his childhood, but every claim to everything stolen from him in the divorce. He glanced out the window. The wind carried flurries like wet sand. 5 days, the clock was ticking. He packed what he could, documents zipped into grocery bags, his mother's coat slung over his arm, and the strongbox wedged beneath his sleeping bag. The battered sedan might not last to the highway, but it was his only shot. He popped the trunk and heaved the box in, cursing as the pain in his shoulder flared again. The drive through the bush country backroads was a white-knuckle crawl. Headlights flickered, tires fishtailed on icy ruts. He remembered his mother's warning, "Nothing final happens in the dark, get your answers in daylight." Each mile between Lake Reeve and the next town felt like it ate another piece of his resolve. At dawn on the 3rd day, he reached Chestnut Hill. The mansion, long abandoned, crouched at the end of a private lane, iron gates sagging under their own weight. Tyler parked under a snow-laden oak, killing the engine. He hobbled up the cracked steps, eyes stinging from road grit and lack of sleep. Knuckles on the door, slow at first, then angry. A voice from inside, "Just a minute." Dennis's rumpled form appeared, flannel wrapped over a suit shirt, scarf half knotted. Get in, they're already scrambling. That appraiser, Jeffries, just landed in town. I checked the filings. Your ex tried to have your power of attorney voided last week." Tyler limped into the kitchen, the scent of old paper and coffee heavy in the air. He dropped the strongbox on the table. Dennis pawed through documents, jaw growing slack. "Birth certificates, DNA analysis, and this." Tyler laid out the sealed heir declaration. Dennis gave a low whistle. "Ivy family hasn't had a valid heir since '98. You kid are sitting on top of the old man's entire estate, real, not rumor. Boston's already hunting the missing fortune since the last fraud trial. I can run these by the probate court, but you'll need backup." He leaned in, voice barely above a whisper. "Ashley's listed as a shell company's agent for the developers. If your proof hits court before the appraisal, they can't sideline you. But if they fake the title first, you're done. That appraiser goes to the property in 5 days, not a minute more." Tyler pressed a hand to his temple, waves of pain nearly overtaking him. "I can't lose this, Dennis." Dennis grinned, eyes alight. "Then don't. You're a tougher bastard than any Ivy who's lived in that crypt. You've got the clock and the proof. Just be careful, these people don't fight fair, and they're desperate." A pulse of urgency, sharp as a knife edge, pounded through Tyler. Time had become the enemy. For an hour, they planned. Dennis would file the documents as sealed evidence with the local courthouse. Tyler would take the duplicate DNA proof to the Ivy estate offices in Boston, presenting himself as legal heir. The challenge? Ashley and the developers had already set wheels in motion, freezing him out of every possible avenue. Dennis pointed a finger at him. "Don't flash the DNA report until you're face to face with their counsel, and guard those originals. Someone's watching me already. I saw 2 SUVs parked along the private drive this morning." Tyler's pulse raced. He thought about the painkillers he'd already run out of, the way his body threatened to quit every few steps. "Doesn't matter," he said, gritting his teeth. "I start the fight, I finish it." A day later it began. The appraiser arrived at Lake Reeve, but so did a stranger, a man in slick boots and expensive denim, sunglasses despite the clouded sky. "You Tyler?" he asked, feigning nonchalance. The one hanging onto the shack. Tyler nodded, foot bracing against the porch. "You're early," he said, curling his good hand around the doorframe. "Let's not play games," the man replied, voice softened by a cultivated drawl. "My clients want this cabin. It's condemned, falls apart in a stiff wind. Why drag this out?" Tyler offered a brittle smile. "Maybe I just like the place." Their eyes locked. The man smiled, all teeth. "We can make the problem go away. Clean, simple, walk away, sign over the deed, you get a fresh start. If not, things get ugly." Tyler felt the weight of the strongbox under his arm, the corner digging into his side. He looked the man dead in the eye. "It's already ugly," he replied. The man's smile faltered. He turned abruptly, heading for a dark Suburban idling up the track. Back inside, Tyler slumped against the wall. His bad arm throbbed, but for once that pain felt like armor, not weakness. He called Dennis. "We've got company, the carrot didn't work, so watch your back." Dennis was silent a long moment. "Then the stick is coming, keep your phone on, they may try legal threats, be ready to record everything." Tyler paced. Each tick of the clock was another inch closer to them stealing what wasn't theirs. But he'd been overlooked his whole life by people sure they could buy, threaten, or cheat their way into control. He dug into the bags, scanned through the air declarations, made digital backups of every file. By dawn, he was running on adrenaline alone. On the third night, his phone rang. Unknown number. "Tyler Wayne Ivy." The voice was familiar, smooth, cold. "Ashley," he spat. "I wondered when you'd call." He heard her inhale slow. "Let it go, Ty, you got the cabin, what more do you want?" Tyler's hand shook, but his voice was rage still. "My life, the one you tried to erase, I found everything. Not just the title, the proof, the Ivy bloodline, you can't shut me out now." Silence, then a brittle edge. "You have no idea what you're up against. That estate, it'll eat you alive, Ty, don't test me." He hung up, heart pounding, every nerve raw. He dialed Dennis, recounted the call. "Lock that door, I'll be by after dark. We send the files to the FBI tomorrow, but you have to deliver the envelope in person to the Ivy estate. Meeting set, no way Ashley sidesteps this time." He hung up, hands sweating despite the cold. He spent the night prepping. Copies of the DN, a report in sealed envelopes, copies of the air declaration to the magistrate, a thumb drive taped to his boot. He rechecked locks, stuffed cash in his sock, and practiced saying his full name, Tyler Wayne Ivy, over and over until it felt like a weapon, not a wound. At noon, the Ivy mansion in Boston loomed, stone lions casting long shadows over the courtyard. Tyler rolled his aching shoulder, pressed the elevator button with his bad arm, flinching at the pain. He entered the boardroom, found Ashley seated at the head of a long mahogany table, developers and lawyers fanned beside her. One recognized him, pale, anxious. Ashley's jaw tightened as she took him in. The others began posturing, shuffling sheaves of paper. A young lawyer began, "Mr. Ivy, we're prepared to offer." He cut them off. "Save it, I'm not here to negotiate." Ashley stiffened. "Ty, this isn't a game, you can't win." He slid the envelope across the table with his working hand, voice steady. "Try to deny this, go ahead." One developer, glasses sliding down his nose, started to reach for the file. Ashley's voice whipped out, "Don't touch that." But another lawyer already had it open, flipping through, lips whitening as he read the headings. Dennis slipped in through a side door, files in hand, nodding at Tyler. The room's tension tightened to a wire. Ashley stood suddenly, palms flat on the table. "You don't know what you're doing, Ty, those papers." He fixed her with a steady gaze. "Say you didn't touch those files." The room was silent, but for the ticking of a clock somewhere. Ashley's face betrayed a flicker of fear. "I'm not lying for you," Dennis interjected, voice flat but low. Ashley spun on him. "Tell them you found nothing." His hand hovered over the envelope, uncertain, dust swirling in the light. "No," he said at last, words crisp as frost. "Not anymore." Footsteps boomed in the marble hallway outside. Ashley's voice darkened. "I said burn them." Tyler stepped forward, heart pounding, breath hot in the chill air. "You're out of time." The doorknob rattled, raised voices, then a sharp crack as a group in blue windbreakers appeared at the threshold, FBI stenciled bold on their chests. Ashley froze. The lead agent's eyes swept the room. "Miss Ivy," the agent called. She turned, mask of confidence falling. "There's nothing illegal here." He cut her off. "We have a federal order for arrest, tax evasion, wire fraud, and RICO conspiracy. Your assets are frozen under law." A collective gasp. One developer scrambled for a phone, another slid away from the table. Ashley's hands, always so calm, trembled. "No, this was all above board." The lead agent approached, cuffs gleaming. "Turn around." Tyler held his ground, broken arm cradled against his chest. Silence flooded the room, a silence that, for the first time in months, wasn't full of fear. Ashley was led away, shame in every stiff step. The developers looked everywhere but at Tyler. Dennis flashed him a crooked grin, thumb cocked toward the hall. "You just toppled the house of cards, kid." Tyler nodded, every wound in his body thrumming with the fact that, for once, nobody could take what belonged to him. One by one, the old guards left, court officials packing away what was left of the lies. When the gavel fell, it was his name on every title, every deed, every record. A statement went out. As legal heir, Tyler Wayne Ivy would claim the full estate. $45 million in property, stocks, and assets, reclaimed and protected, not parceled out to sharks or thieves. Ashley faced multiple federal counts. The developers scrambling for a seat at the table found themselves under parallel investigation for conspiracy and fraud. Within weeks, the city's rumor mill blazed with news of her icy fall from socialite Grace. Privately, lawyers predicted a prison sentence, possibly 20 years, assets seized, names in the paper not for charity balls but criminal indictments. Tyler didn't attend the sentencing. He spent his days walking the cracked marble halls of the Ivy Mansion, dust motes drifting in golden slants of winter afternoon. Alone but not lonely, each echo in the corridor was a chapter reclaimed. He quietly set to work, drafting a plan with Dennis's help. The first act, forming the Ivy Foundation, a trust for supporting women fleeing abusive marriages. The second, renovating the Chestnut Hill homestead into a shelter for single mothers with nowhere else to go. Donations began to pour in. Journalists swarmed, but Tyler took on none of the old Ivy heirs. He sat across the table from the mayor, reminding him of how quickly fortunes could change hands. On the anniversary of his mother's death, he stood in the cabin at Lake Reeve, this time as its unchallenged owner. He laid a single rose on the sill, whispered thanks for every shortcoming he once cursed, wound now tempered into steel. No more shadows, no more doubt. His life was his own. The day I stepped from that cabin into the cold dawn, I thought I had nothing left. Turns out I was only missing the truth. When those who stand at the edge with nothing to lose finally find solid ground, the world trembles. Don't ever let anyone convince you what you're worth. And if you believe the last page is already written, remember this. The best stories hide in moldy cabins, waiting for someone stubborn enough to swing open a secret door. If you found hope tucked between loss and discovery, pass it forward. The next chapter belongs to you. Tyler didn't stay in Boston. For all the mansion's echoing grandeur, polished wood, and oil portraits glowering down like centuries-old sentries, it held no warmth he wanted. Reports filtered in, Ashley's plea deals rejected, the developer slinking off, news articles calling it the last Ivy reckoning. For weeks he watched from a careful distance, letting lawyers and accountants unpick the tangles of fraud. His name in the news, he barely recognized it. But locals on Main Street nodded to him now. Dewey's Diner posted a sign, Ivy Pie Limited Return. He grinned, ducked through the doorways that once felt too fine for a kid from the sticks. Dennis phoned him every morning. You doing okay, Ty? Better than I have in years, he replied, looking out over the new snow on Lake Reeve. We reached anyone at the foundation today. A dozen calls already, and the papers want a photo. You sure you don't want your face on the cover? He laughed, shaking his head. Let the work stand for itself. People don't need another sad Ivy headline. Dennis snorted. You keep surprising me, kid. In the background, Tyler could hear a teapot boiling and the whir of the old printer. Just promise you'll come to the foundation opening next week. Bring that coat your mom left you. I'll be there, Tyler said, meaning it. He drove out to the cabin, roads winding through frost-laced birch and pine, sky as blue as summer dreams. It was still his favorite place, more so now that it was truly his. The hidden corridor was cleaned out. He'd sealed up the false cabinet, left the old key hanging on a nail by the door. The secrets at last could rest. Sometimes he opened his mother's battered journals. In each margin, reminders to be brave, to forgive, to stare down the world when necessary. Margie Ivy's voice in neatly looped sentences, always ending with a joke or a warning. Don't trust a man who says he's got no secrets. He's just better at hiding them. On the foundation's opening day, the Chestnut Hill mansion brimmed with unfamiliar laughter, children tearing down echoing halls, women testing the doorknobs, marveling at rooms that would soon be theirs. Tyler shook 100 hands. He smiled stiffly for a photo he'd agreed to only after Dennis threatened to tell the press about Tyler's old high school haircut. A reporter approached, tape recorder in hand. Mr. Ivy, when did you know you wanted to do something good with all this? He paused, searching the faces assembled in the ballroom. The minute I realized it wouldn't mean anything if I kept it to myself, he answered. My mother always said, do the hard thing first and you'll find yourself surrounded by the right people. The reporter nodded, satisfied, and moved on. Tyler saw Dennis leaning in a doorway, arms crossed, proud grin splitting his face. When the ceremony quieted, Tyler slipped out to the back porch, cold wind snapping at the corners of his coat. He gazed out over the rolling lawns, the ice-whitened trees. Footsteps behind him, Dennis bearing 2 coffee mugs. Would she be proud? Dennis asked, offering a mug. She already was, Tyler replied, quiet as snowfall. They drank together, listening to the growing noise inside, a riot of beginnings. Tyler felt the scars in his shoulder, the phantom echoes of lost years, but none of it seemed to matter anymore. He'd built something from his mother's faith, from the proof in a hidden box, from the stubborn belief that the past could be put to better use. He fell into rhythms of small town and city life. A day at the foundation, evenings in the cabin, weekend drives on mountain roads that twisted like his own story. People still called him Mr. Ivy, never quite sure if he wanted to laugh or shiver at the title, but doors opened now. Not with deference, but with genuine welcome. And with each month Lake Reeve thawed, wildflowers crept down the hills, and the old cabin brightened inside and out. He hosted holiday dinners for anyone with nowhere else to go. He paid off bills at the general store when no one was looking. He kept the coat and the first letter his mother left, for Tyler, there's more to this than you know, in a safe as reminders. Sometimes dreams still woke him, black ice, twisting wreckage, Ashley's hard voice, the snap of a lock turning in secret. He learned to let them come. By dawn, he'd walk the porch, breathing in spruce and snowmelt, letting the cold wake him to the life finally his. One spring day, a note arrived, anonymous, handwritten, unsigned. Just 5 words, thank you for believing. H. He smiled, folded it, put it with the others. Some things, he realized, didn't need unraveling. They just needed someone who wouldn't look away. Back in Boston, trouble never quite ceased. Old money and new schemes found ways to slither back. But Tyler had outlived the worst of it, and his patience for secrets was spent. He answered letters, he sat for interviews, just enough to keep the foundation solvent, not enough to be anyone's figurehead. He found peace in the ordinary. Coffee on frosty mornings, wild geese over the lake, laughter echoing off bare cabin walls. When the world tried to press his story into legend or tragedy, he told it straight, never flinching from the broken parts. He told anyone who'd listen, the line between what you run from and what you run toward is thinner than you think. Sometimes all it takes is a stubborn heart and a little truth. By autumn's turn, ivy, real ivy, crept up the walls of the old house at Chestnut Hill. Tyler paused one late afternoon, hand on the stone, and ran his palm along new shoots. He thought of the generations tangled up in secrets, names changed or stolen, fortunes lost and found. He bent brushed snow from the narrow walk and unlocked the front door, his door. Inside, the rooms were warm with life, saturated with stories still unfolding. There was nothing left to fear and nothing more to prove. He looked out past the frostbitten fields, toward the gleam of Lake Reeve and the little cabin that had given him the first clue, turning back only to whisper, "Thank you, Mom. I found it." He stepped into his future and closed the door behind him. Spring deepened and word spread along the lake that Tyler intended to stay for good. Locals eased by to share stories or offer help painting the porch. He hired neighbors for repairs, never bargaining them down, always sharing coffee and the occasional joke about city lawyers and country plumbing. On a rare quiet evening, as twilight bled lavender over the thawing water, a battered pickup ground to a stop at the cabin's drive. Tyler recognized the silhouette before the woman even stepped out, Hazel, the old caretaker whose name filled the margins of so many of his mother's notes. She moved slower now, cane in hand, hair gone all silver, but her eyes held the sharp approval of someone who'd seen men rise and fall. "Ivy," she called, voice half mocking, half proud. "I thought I'd never see you out here again." Tyler grinned, waving her close. "Thought I'd hidden from you long enough." "You think secrets ever fooled me or Margie?" Hazel gave him a sideways look, then nudged inside, ticking her eyes to the wall where his mother's photo hung beside the key. "You done right by her by yourself. Only thing left is to live it." She stayed for tea, recounting tales from the mansion, stories of his mother's laughter and midwinter daring, how Margie once hid coins for a neighbor's rent, how she stacked firewood for widows just before the first snows. Tyler listened, hungry for each remembered word, feeling the old wounds knitting tighter shut. As dusk gathered, Hazel pressed her hand over his. "Let the house be full, not fancy. Let your mother's name mean something good, not just gold." Her palm was rough and sure. "And when it gets too quiet, when luck sours, remember this place, these people, they're yours." He walked her out, watching the red taillights dance away along the rutted track. That night, Tyler sat on his porch, looking out over Lake Reeve shimmering beneath a harvest moon. His life, once small, once scattered, had stretched wide again, full of faces and stories and second chances. Above him, the sky was bright with new stars. He raised his mug, a silent toast to endings, to mercy, and to every secret door finally flung open.